Hello and welcome to the Authortube Writing Conference of 2022. Now it's day 3, so I imagine you're already jam-packed full of information, but I do appreciate you joining me on my channel to hear my talk. Today's topic will be pretty interesting. If you're not familiar with who I am, my name is Liz Potter. I'm also known as the Blurb Medic. I run my own blurb writing business, and I love working with self-published authors because I swear I learn something new every single time with every single person that I work with, and I feel like I have the best job in the world. I have so much fun. So today's video has been pre-recorded. However, if you stick with me till the end, I'll be hopping on live for a live Q&A. Maybe a little bit of growing pains with that as I navigate that for the first time. However, I'm really excited. You don't have to ask me questions about the topic that I'm talking about today, although it definitely, I think, makes it easier for everybody to understand if we stay on topic. But with that said, let's get started. And well, I thought since we're all writers here that maybe we could start with a story. I want you to imagine that you're walking into a medium-sized bookstore, excited to get your hands on a new book. Let's say you're like me and you love a good mystery thriller. And since the bookstore is basically your second home, you know that once you've cleared the front doors, all you have to do is veer to the right, head straight to the back past the recommended reads tables, and get all the way into that dark corner. There, sandwiched between romance and sci-fi fantasy, you see it, the 3 aisles of hair-raising glory. But no sooner has your heart skipped a beat that you suddenly feel a twang of stress because you just realize that there's so many books on just these 3 shelves that you're not sure where to start. Maybe if you have a favorite author and you can remember their name, you'll start on the shelf with their books because it's a good bet that someone else with a name that starts with the same letter might just have that juicy book you've been waiting for. Or if your mind draws a blank, maybe you'll just decide to start anywhere, allowing your eyes to dance along the covers until they find the one that intrigues you. You're looking for that book that's going to knock your socks off. And suddenly, there it is, the one that's caught your eye. The cover is just screaming for you to buy it, and you're almost sold. But as you turn it around to dive into a sneak peek of the story, you're confronted with a massive wall of text. Well, it's too much to handle, so you quickly set the book down and start all over again. This was not the one. Now you let your eyes browse again, and you're delighted that there's another cover that makes you do a little happy dance. You follow the same turn of the book, hoping that the back of this one will impress you. But of course, yet another disappointment. And now you're frustrated, not just because it's hard to find a book, but because you're so annoyed with these letdowns that you don't even feel like reading a book anymore. It looks like it's going to be one of those days where you'll actually leave the bookstore empty-handed. What I've just described here is an experience that a lot of people have in common. So not just you on a personal level, but pretty much every single person on this planet that's ever thought about buying a book or who has ever bought a book. It continues to be the main obstacle that stops people from buying books, and it's the main reason why authors struggle to sell their books. So what exactly is going on here? Well, what I'm trying to get across is that you have to think about your potential new reader's experience when they're just kind of in the act of looking for a new book, long before they've ever decided or settled on yours to read. You're going to have to persuade them to read your blurb without them even realizing that you've sneakily done it. Because people don't buy books based on their covers alone, regardless of how pretty they look. So, what's the secret? In a moment, I'm going to show you the back covers of 3 books. All are written by successful authors, but only one has the ability to draw someone in immediately. I'm going to give you about 6 seconds, which is the average attention span of someone who is just browsing for a new book, and I want you to see if you can figure out which one it is. Let's go. All right, your 6 seconds are up. which one do you think is the winner? If you picked this one, you're right. And you're right because you followed your instincts. And your instinct was to pick the one that would have stood out to you. And why is it that this one out of the three of them stands out? Well, more than likely, it's because of this right here. If you're not familiar with what this is called a headline. So what is a headline anyways? I would argue it is the most important and crucial element to having a successful book blurb, because not only does it suck a person's eye in and tell it where you want them to start reading, but it also forms a connection with them. And when someone feels connected to your book right off the get-go, then they're going to feel like it is a very valuable book and they're going to want to buy it. Now, headline itself is a copywriting term. Copywriting is the style of writing that's used in advertisements, and essentially the headline in copywriting or in ads is always used to get a specific audience's attention. You want them, or you want to kind of call out to the person that your product or your service is made for so that they know that that ad is for them, and everyone that doesn't fall into that category can reject it or not watch it in the beginning or to begin with. So how important really is the headline relative to the rest of your blurb? Well, like I just explained, you're calling out your ideal audience, the ideal person that you want reading your book. The headline, incidentally, is where the decision to buy your book happens in about 80% of cases. So what that means is 4 out of every 5 people have already decided whether or not they're going to buy your book just based off of those 5 lines. Now, when we go back to this example, you subconsciously already made a judgment about this middle book, that this is the book that you want to read. You've already decided that these aren't worth it. This is how quickly it happens. It's subconscious. It's completely out of the control of, the reader, unless they're intentionally giving a specific author a chance. This is what's going to win out 4 out of 5 times. So absolutely, absolutely crucial. So now I've showed you the example of walking into a bookstore, but you know that the majority of books are actually sold online, specifically on Amazon.com. So does the same rule still apply there? Let's find out. All right, so here we are on a normal book page on Amazon, and the reason I pulled up Amazon is because it is really the biggest online retailer of books. And one thing that I want to immediately draw your attention to is right down here, this box. This is, of course, where you would find your blurb. But if you notice, there is this read more button that people have to push in order to see the entirety of your blurb. What this tells us, although Amazon doesn't share this information, is that yes, absolutely. The vast majority of people are making that decision to not buy your book here, because people who are interested in buying your book will push this read more button. So the only reason why Amazon would ever bother to put that in is if the majority of people are already turned away up here. And this is why I want to highlight that, yes, the rule still stands even when you're online, and it is very, very important to already be shining up here. All this really means is that all your new potential readers are customers first. So we established that they're superficial. They really only like shiny objects. They are very quick to judge the value of your book just based on how the blurb looks. They also have a very low attention span, and they're constantly stressed. They're worrying about things like if they're going to get ripped off, or if the book that they're buying is actually something that they're going to like. So very much so, they are assuming that the ability of your book to get their attention is a direct indication of the value of your book, meaning that if it's not drawing their attention, then as far as they're concerned, it's a crap book. And that's obviously unfair. So what does that mean for you? Well, we can absolutely use this reflex to our advantage. We can write a headline that makes them feel invited and welcome, gives them the power of choice. You will not believe how much power someone or you can instill in someone just in your headline. And we set accurate expectations so that the right reader, the right or target person that you want reading your book feels connected right at the headline. And once they read further along into the blurb, then they still feel connected and they still feel like all of their expectations are being met. Now, of course, just by looking at something like this, you can see how important it is, or how they're going to make a decision really, really quickly. This is a giant wall of text. There's no headline. I have no idea where my eye is supposed to go as a reader. And because this is so much text, right away I've already given up on this book. I can see a nice cover. I can see great ratings, but this completely turns me off, and I'm going to be getting off of this page and finding a similar book or another book that covers the same topic that has a much nicer blurb. So in terms of visuals, what is actually important, or how can we make our blurb look inviting visually? Really, kind of three main things that they're looking for. So the big things are breathing room. So they're looking for the headline not to be too long and for it to be definitely in a very obvious way separate from the rest of your blurb. They're looking for it to be eye-catching. So what it's supposed to do is it's supposed to grab their eye and bring them right to it. And we do that very easily just by bolding it. And if you introduce fun little elements like an ellipses or em dash, then those are other visual features that are interesting for our eyes to look at. The third, more kind of subtle thing is for it to look easy to read. So not to have any awkward words that, would trip up our eyes. And because it's bringing your eyes or bringing the reader's eyes right to the beginning, it's helping that reader have a good flow. They're far more likely to buy your book if they read it from the beginning to the end. And so if you can bring their eyes right up top by making it easy to read, having lots of breathing room, and bolding it or making it look important, then half your work is done. What I want to do is look at an example of a good or a visually stunning blurb, and then one that's not so much. Okay, and we'll go through the features here. So this book, 12 Months to 1 Million, has obviously a very clear point, and that is to help people make $1 million. And if you notice right away, the headline is right at the very top. It's smaller than the rest of the text. So if it was the same, if it was kind of the same look as the rest, if it wasn't bolded, then it would get lost because my eye would probably go down here somewhere where there is more text. Wherever we see contrast, or subconsciously, we evaluate that to be more important information. So right away, my eye is drawn up here. So it's making it easy to read. Also, there's no crazy things that, or awkward words that stick out that would get me tripped up. There's lots of visual interest in terms of the bolding and then the ellipses in the middle here. And it's right at the very top. So it's performing its function of getting me to go right up top and start reading from the top. Now, one that needs a little bit of work. So this is I brought this example because Frida McFadden is a very successful author. I actually hadn't heard of her before I found this blurb, but once I started looking into her background, I was like, wow, I'm just completely blown away at her repertoire there. Either way, what I want to draw your eye to here is, or kind of point out, is that even well-established authors struggle to get this part right. So what's kind of not working for me in this blurb is that there's kind of bolding happening all over the place. This blurb has a very clear and strong headline. It's actually very good and very interesting, but I can't tell that it's a headline because it just blends in with everything else. And so I'm not getting the full effect. Now, one thing that this blurb has going for it is that it's very short, so someone would probably read it in its full no matter what. The issue is that, again, my eye right now is being drawn down here actually, because this not only has more bolding than up here, but it's also a much denser piece of text. And so what'll happen is my eye will be drawn here, or your reader's eye will be drawn here. They'll read this part and figure it out. It looked important, so they felt like they had to read it first. And now they realize, oh, actually, it's not the start. I have to go back to the beginning. So they're going to read here and think, ooh, this is awesome. But when they get back down to this sentence, now they're going to be annoyed that they have to read it for a second time. It's not your fault that they have to read it a second time, but it is the fault of the headline not bringing their eye right up front. All right, so once your book passes the visual test, the next test that you have to pass is the content test. So readers do have very specific likes when it comes to content. So first, they're looking for it to be relatable or immersive, meaning that they can get a good idea of who the main character is, or what the main storyline is, or even what the setting is. Second, they care that there's an emotion or a mood, because emotion is memorable, mood is memorable. And both of those are aspects of genre, right? You're not going to write happy words when it's, something thrilling, and you're not going to write, sexy words when it's like about performing, a circumcision. So these are both indicators of genre, and also create those expectations or kind of solidify those expectations for the reader that, yes, you chose a thrilling book or a thriller book. This is a thrilling book because there's adventure. There's, you have to run because time is running out. And, those are all words that reinforce thrill, for example. Next, just like it needs to look easy to read, it actually has to be easy to read. Studies show that although kind of the average reading level of most people is grade 7, we actually think and connect with text when it's written at a grade 4 level. That's where it feels like we understand it the best. And so the simpler you can make it, the better. Of course, if your book is a nonfiction where you're teaching a very specific skill, for instance, software development or something like that, then of course the reading level is going to be higher because someone needs to be educated enough to understand that content. But in a simple fiction book, dumb it down as much as possible, because that's how you're going to get connection more quickly. The fourth element, which isn't talked about all that much, but that we do see actually a lot, is something called social proof. So this is where other people have read the book and they've vetted it. So that can be either through getting awards, or you have people leaving really good reviews, or even being subscribed or now nominated under some sort of book club, like Oprah's book club or Obama's book club, all the big ones. So let's look at a couple of examples here. Here is a good one. So overall, the blurb is short, but right away, my eye goes up to the headline. This headline is short, it's simple to read, and it has several really, really interesting elements. So we get introduced to this Detective Bill Harney. So now I'm already getting a feeling of who the main character is, right? This is immersing me into that character. And because he was a best-selling detective, that tells me that this is not the first book, that this character has done something before and it's been loved. So there's already vetting going on, and some relation or description of this character and how much they've been loved before. Now this character is chasing down a billionaire crime boss and a prison escape artist while a young girl's life hangs in the balance. So right away I get a really good sense of the thrill, the suspense that's going on in this book, the feeling of time running out and having to catch someone before someone dies. Very, very intense, very good indicators of what the genre is. And again, introducing more characters without overwhelming everybody, because we're not getting names and things like that. And again, is very easy to read. It's not too long, maximum 2 lines. Fantastic. Here's another example where I would say they've kind of gone to the extreme with the headlines that they've used. Now, I hadn't mentioned it before, but again, headlines is a copywriting term. In literature, you would call it a hook, but we use different types of things that can be considered hooks. And in this author's case, who is also a comedian, there are 2 separate types of headlines being used. There's a tagline, and all taglines are headlines, but not all headlines are taglines, because up here we've got something different, which is the social proof that I was just talking about. So the vetting that this book is actually worth its weight in gold, right? We've got a best-selling status here. We've got it becoming a major motion picture by Steven Spielberg, of all people. Goodness me. Now we've got a couple of good quotations going here, or good reviews from people. So these are different than this type of headline, but these are all considered different headlines. Do you need these? No. Does it help? It does, but you don't want to go overboard. I think Mr. Osmond could have been fine with just leaving one of these, either a review or this kind of touting of the book, and then this is the main thing that we're interested in, because this is what's actually getting the reader into the story. And again, it's formulated really well because I get an idea of who the characters are. 4 septuagenarians with a few tricks up their sleeves, a female cop with her first big case, a brutal murder. Welcome to the Thursday Murder Club. Obviously, there's a heavy topic like murder, but it is kind of fun because it's a murder club and they've got tricks up their sleeves. These are all words that indicate that this is more of a lighter murder mystery type thing. It's under thriller and suspense, but I would say it's probably more of like a cozy mystery, if anything. And the last really important aspect of this, which I'm not going to delve into too much, but really when you're creating your headline, it's really important that it mirrors what comes after it. So it has to be reinforced by the rest of the blurb, because you're creating very specific expectations up here, and they have to continue as you continue the blurb. And very much whatever feeling, whatever topic you focus on, or whatever emotion or storyline or whatever you focus on, that has to be mirrored in the cliffhanger. It's almost like having a sandwich where you've got the top bun, the cliffhanger is the bottom bun, and they absolutely have to be made of the same bread. Otherwise, the sandwich just does not taste right. So let's look at this example that needs a little bit of work. So we've got the bolding down, so it makes me feel like this is a headline. But once I start reading, it turns out that this is actually not a headline. My rule is, if you're going to bold something, it has to be something that actually makes sense, is an important piece of information, and it's going to be memorable. When it comes to this author, she's decided to bold the names of her characters, and unfortunately, it's kind of not using the bolding to its full potential. And why I would say you always reserve it just for a headline is because nobody remembers names. We are just meeting these people. We're not going to remember their names, and therefore they're not the most important pieces of information. Because we don't have a lot of time in this presentation, and I want to make sure I get to some questions, I really, really want to talk about this foolproof headline, or the most foolproof headline, which is the one that we've been talking about all along, and that is the elevator pitch style, or I also call it a condenser style headline. And again, the 3 crucial elements of it we've already talked about, but let's talk about them again. So the first one is that it be relatable or immersive. So relatable if it's a nonfiction, and immersive if it's a fiction book. And of course, have the emotion and mood in there. So if it's a thriller, make me feel it. If it's romantic, make me feel it. If it's inspirational, make me feel it. If it's going to change my life, make me feel it. Okay? And of course, the third element, which people glaze over, but really it is super important. Make it easy to read, because if someone can understand it, if your message is clear, then they connect. And the sooner they connect, the more likely they are to read the blurb to the end and buy it or buy the book. So let's build a headline based on a real book that I've worked on. This is a book by Trina Bronken. She's a Canadian author, and this is actually the second book in this series. It's about a investigative journalist who discovers this black market of organ trafficking that's happening. It's based on true events. There is a market for this illegal cadaver or body and organ harvesting that goes on, and she decided to turn that into a fictional thriller. And so in this book, this journalist ends up discovering this horrible secret, and then suddenly he's a target for whoever is carrying out all the bad stuff. You know, it's a good book, a very good book. So when she first brought it to me, this is what she had. All she had was the actual blurb itself and a little bit of kind of a descriptive sentence at the very end. And after talking with her, I realized the blurb is written very well. You know, it's sets me into the story right away, so it's very, very effective, but it's missing a headline. So she wanted to try her hand at writing another version, and so she came back at me with this draft. So this is where she added her own headline. And let's read it together. So 20 people die every day in the US waiting for an organ transplant. That is a fact. What lines would you cross to get a kidney, liver, or heart for your sick child, wife, or husband? So a question is actually a very effective style of headline. However, there's a little bit of a problem here, and that is that I'm not feeling what this book is about. And in fact, this headline is far too general. It's talking about, you know, everybody else's situation. And what I would be more interested in as a reader is to be introduced to her character right away, or at least the circumstances of the book. What lines would you cross to get that, you know, get these crucial things for your body? It's too general. It's not specific enough, and it kind of has that danger zone of being a rhetorical question, because of course people would go a really long way, or they would go very, very far to take care of their loved ones. So it doesn't work. It doesn't have as much effect. Now, I will say rhetorical questions do not make bad headlines. People say, oh, they're too cliche and whatever, but cliche is good. When something is cliche, it means people are familiar with it, and that means that there's a common understanding. And what's really important in any blurb is to convey understanding or clarity. So if something is a message that someone's heard time and time again, even though they may think it's cliche, they're still going to understand it. They're still going to connect, and there's still going to be interest there. So don't shy away from that completely. In the case of Trina's book, we decided we had to do a little bit of kind of formatting here to make the blurb stand out a little bit more. But the really big thing here was the headline. So right now, in the second version, the reader's eye absolutely is going to go to that headline. It's effective that way, but it's going to have a bit of a flat effect. So this is kind of the process that we went through. So first, we determined what is going to be the main draw of our new headline. And basically we went back to what the actual blurb was, because the blurb was written very well and it very much focused on the story. So we decided to go with, we're going to go with the story. We're going to tell the story in that elevator pitch style right off the bat. Because it's a crime thriller, then we need to use words in our headline that reinforce that feeling. So we came up with a list of words that are very common in that genre and put them out there. We laid them out so that we could use them as we were building our headline. The third step was to just write as many headlines as possible. I mean, it was, the worst things that came out of our brains, we put them down, and you have to do that. You just write as many headlines as possible. Don't edit as you go, edit later. Write, just write, because the more practice you get, the better you get, and the more you start to feel which direction you want to go and how you want to word things. And then once you have your final list, you start to take away the crappy ones, and then the ones that are kind of, they sound kind of good, but when you read them again and again, they're actually not having the effect that you want. And then you reduce it until you have your top 5. And then the last thing that we did after we chose our top 5 was to put it into something called the Hemingway app. Now, this is a really great free resource if you're not using it already to make your writing more readable, then absolutely do it. But it is good for your blurb so that you can get your headlines and the rest of the blurb down to that between grade 4 to grade 7 reading level. Now, because this book focuses on kind of a more mature topic, and it's not appropriate necessarily for people who have only grade 4 reading level, we chose to pull the reading level up just a tiny bit. But at the end of the day, it is a fairly easy to understand blurb. So let's look at the blurb dump that we did here. I've just given you 3. There were way too many, but here we go. 2 investigative journalists, so the characters, uncover a morbid network of crime. So morbid, really strong word. But will they live long enough to break the story? So now we're adding that element of thrill that, their lives are in danger. It's obvious. Next one. A deflated journalist and a veteran reporter team up to unravel a morbid network of medical atrocities that will shock the nation. That one we decided way too big of a mouthful, so boom, it's gone. The next one, using a little bit of her original. 20 people die every day in the US waiting for an organ transplant. And now we zoom in on the main character. As 2 determined journalists are about to discover, some people will go to disturbing lengths to change that. So there were some options. Now, the final one we chose was actually this one. They uncovered a disturbing network of organ trafficking. Now they're running for their lives. Very final, very punchy, very easy to read, very easy to understand. Okay? So it doesn't have to be the best thing you've ever written. Like this is not, the most incredible thing you've ever seen in your life, but it answers those needs that we have. 1, it immerses us in the story. Right away, we get an idea that this is a story about crime and that the main characters' lives are going to be in danger. Boom. I've just told the whole blurb in those 2 lines. We're going to tell the rest of the blurb in more detail, but for all intents and purposes, that's the story right there. Second, we've got lots of genre words, lots of emotion, lots of mood, and it's easy to understand, right? Short sentences, and yeah, they're getting shorter as we go along. Now, the other thing that you'll notice is there's been quite a bit of formatting done. So we've broken up that big wall of text and made it smaller. And even though it's now taking up more space, it actually looks easier to read. And we've also highlighted the last portion, which was a descriptive sentence, which does not follow the storyline. It's a separate idea. We've made it look different again by bolding it. So that's totally something that you can do. But if we were just to block the bottom half of this page and only see the top, the reader gets a very good idea of what this book is about. By the way, if you're interested in picking up this book, then it's going to be releasing either at the end of this month or very, very soon. So go to trinabronken.com. It's also in the box below, and you can sign up for the mailing list and wait to get that book. All right, so this is the last topic that I'm going to touch on when it comes to headlines, or the last kind of use that they have, and why I harp on my clients so much. That is so important to have this. If you noticed earlier, I did mention that Trina and I, for her book, we ended up choosing 5 that we liked. 1 we chose as the main one for her actual copy, so for the print copy and for the Amazon, but the rest we're going to be using, or she's going to be using to do other stuff with, such as ads. Now, if you're an author that actually wants to sell your books, and if you're at this chat today, then I know that you want to. One of the things that you have to do is market your book. Marketing, a lot of authors shut off when they hear that word just because it looks scary and because they don't really understand what it means. But really what marketing boils down to is making noise so that people actually know that your book is out and available for them to look at and purchase and read. So don't be afraid to do it, and you should do it. And one of the places where the headlines come or become really useful is when you're setting up your product or how it looks when it's advertised just generally on Amazon. And this is done based on how, or basically it's the Amazon algorithm, so let's not worry about it. But essentially, when you're setting up your book, you can either have it have standard text, which is where it just displays the title and then the star rating and what edition it's available in, or you can ask custom text. And custom text is, there's a character limit to how long it can be, so this is why a headline is perfect, but it's essentially where you can tell a reader right away before they even go to your book page what your book is about. And this is such a good move, especially when there's so many books that just have this. A, it draws in the eye. B, you're making it, again, even easier for your potential new reader to discover you because you're already, before they've even gone to your page, immersing them in the story. And it makes it stand out from all the rest. Again, it's that whole bias that happens, that when someone sees how much care you've taken to make something for them or make something easy for them, then they feel that you value them more, and also in that sense they value you more. So these 3 books are going to be seen as more valuable than these 3 that don't have any of this custom text. All right. There you have it, my lecture on headlines and why I think they're so important. And I hope that after watching this video that you also understand why they're so important, and how, honestly, if you write nothing at all for your blurb, at least have a headline. The way things are going, at the end of, the next 50 years, there will only be headlines and nothing else. So get that practice in now. If you're interested in any of the other types of headlines that are out there, then you can, or I've written an article on my website, www.blurbmedic.com. Under articles, there's one called How to Write a Blurb Headline. Please check that out. I give you plenty of examples. There's also some pinnable kind of quick links at the very bottom. But in a moment now, we're going to start a live Q&A. And so if you have any questions or anything that you wanted some clarification on, then bear with me as I switch over to live, and I'll get those questions answered as best as I can. But for now, thank you so much for joining me. Also, oh my goodness, I totally forgot. I have a special offer to everybody that's joined me today, and that is that I would like to offer you a free 5-minute feedback assessment of your blurb. So if you have a blurb written, then go to the link below and fill out the form, send it to me, and I'm going to respond with a at least 5-minute feedback video where I go through how your blurb looks and I go through how it sounds, and I pretty much let you know where your weaknesses are, where your strengths are, and what you should be doing next. That's something that is exclusive for you guys only, and it is available until July the 30th. So grab your spot now while you can. But yeah, I will see you now in very short order for the live Q&A. Toodaloo.